Hi there, Kelsey again. Global Learning Project interaction number 2. I originally planned to talk with Alex for every single interaction, but she was busy over spring break and I wasn't able to get in touch with her. So for my second interaction, I decided to cook with a girl who actually lived down the hall from me my sophomore year of college. Her name is Melanie. She grew up in Manchester, Michigan, which is a pretty wealthy suburb of Detroit. She's lived in the Metro Detroit area pretty much her whole life. So that's kind of a cultural difference there with me growing up on the farm. And so since my project is focusing on food, we decided to cook, which she actually hates. She tries to avoid it as much as possible. Her staple meal is cereal. So to make a real meal for her was a bit out of her comfort zone. But for me, cooking has always been a really big responsibility. Growing up on the farm, I've always been very used to knowing where my food comes from. We always had vegetables, milk, beef that we grew and produced. Melanie, on the other hand, never really had to think about those kinds of things, and she never really had any experience in the kitchen. Her family ate out a lot. Her mom and dad were always working, so there wasn't that day-to-day interaction kind of through food. So we ended up making spaghetti using my mom's special recipe. All the ingredients were grown and produced in my own backyard. Well, not all, but most. Spaghetti as a meal doesn't really connect to like the German side of my heritage, but it is an old family recipe, an old style of making things. Almost everything we used was grown at our house. We raised the steer that we made the beef out of. We grew the tomatoes, that kind of thing. Pretty much the only thing that wasn't homegrown was the pasta. So anyway, Melanie hadn't really cooked before, and she absolutely refuses to touch raw meat, which for me was interesting and a little bit funny because, like I said, I've always been cooking and preparing meals for my family since I was like 10 or 12. So that was just something that I've watched my mom do and I knew how to do and that kind of thing. So I learned a couple different things about our cultures. One is that mine is very dependent on the land and on family. One of the ways that our family shares knowledge is through recipes. So we've got this homemade recipe book that's passed throughout the family as we're looking to make something like donuts or bread or desserts. I've never really thought about the importance of that before. I just kind of thought it was something that everybody did until I encountered someone like Melanie who's never really cooked in her life. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I just thought that like in most families, like, you know, like the sharing of like secret recipes and things like that was pretty common. And that, like, you know, like when you're 20 years old, you should know how to cook. But, you know, that's just something different that somebody else grew up with. And for her, that just wasn't as important because, like, they were always busy. So I did have a previous misconception going into the project. I figured that she wouldn't place a lot of emphasis on family and tradition. But they do that in a different way. So while she and her family don't really cook or prepare food and share recipes, they do have traditions around food. So, like, they'll go to IHOP with their grandma every Sunday. They go out to eat on Friday nights to a local burger joint. It's not the same, but it's still family building relationships around food, which I think is pretty interesting. So, yeah. That's about it for this one. Next time, hopefully I'll be back on track to make a Mexican dish with Alex. So, thanks.